Welcome back to Fresh Eyes Hockey Podcast, presented by Xena Pucks. I'm Brian Matusi here with Andy, and let's get this show started today, Andrew. We got the last week of the regular season ahead of us. You know, we're down to the last 4 days. Season ends on, Thursday night. So a couple games left. We pretty well know what the West looks like in the playoffs. We're just kind of waiting to see what the East is going to be. But yeah, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm at the point now where I'm just like, all right, let's wrap this up and get to the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be nice if the teams in the East could figure it the fuck out. Where, you know, like I said, we got the West locked down already, and we're going to talk about that in a little while here. But yeah, it certainly would be nice to just know the matchups. It would certainly make previewing this easier. But nonetheless, we got a couple days to go. So I want to start the show by mentioning Jakob Silfverberg on the Anaheim Ducks. Him and the team announced that he would be retiring at the end of this year. He has played 12 seasons in the NHL. 11 of them have been with the Ducks. And those of you who remember those mid-2010s Ducks teams that were really good, he was on an incredible line with Ryan Kessler and Andrew Cogliano, and for a short while with Matt Bolesky, too. That 2015 run, that second line of Silfverberg, Kessler, and Bolesky was unreal. So really good player, really sound defensive player, and over 800 games in the league. It's certainly no career to sneeze at. A very talented player and getting out while he's still young, just in his early 30s.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm actually a little surprised he's getting out this early. I thought he was probably going to do at least another 3 years and then call it quits. So kind of surprising to see him go this soon. But I mean, you don't know what goes on in somebody's mind, what his thought process is. So
yeah, and he may, who knows, he may look at coaching, or you just never know. Ultimately, he's a really, really we always talk about the guys with the high hockey IQ. He really kind of is that kind of player. So I certainly think he would make a great coach. So maybe there's a future in it for him, but he could also want to go home and play in Europe too. So like I said, he's still very young. I mean, he's made a shit ton of money in the league. He's, had an incredible career. Definitely not a Hall of Famer by any stretch, but just a really good player. And yeah, I'm with you a little bit. It was a little surprising, but I also, in that same respect, would not be surprised to see him go home and play in Europe.
At this point, now that you mentioned it, that's probably where the logic is. Wants to do it while he's still young. I just want to point out, though, I mean, those Ducks teams he was a part of, especially that 2015 Ducks team, where they were unreal. I mean, I'm honestly surprised. I thought they were going to run through Chicago in that Eastern Conference final matchup. Or I'm sorry, Western Conference final. I'll be over here. Western Conference final matchup. So regardless, respect to him, and we wish him well.
Yeah. So good on him, man. Retirement in your early 30s sounds incredible. So good on him, and I hope he enjoys every second of it.
Absolutely.
Let's move on and talk about the University of Denver. They won the NCAA championship last night. Really great game against Boston College. Shutout for Denver, 2-0 win. So really close game. Unfortunately, it did not turn out the way Boston College fans were hoping, but Denver was a really highly touted team from the beginning of this season, and especially the beginning of this tournament. So not at all surprised to see that they came out on top of this. And also a quick shout out to Macklin Celebrini from Boston University, who won the Hobey Baker Award. So not at all surprised to see that. I heard something on Twitter, or not on Twitter. Sorry, I forgot what show I was listening to, and someone's like, watch him play another season at Boston University and not even get drafted this year. So, I shouldn't. I mean, I don't know if he has to declare for the draft or not. I actually am not sure of that process, but I mean, really, if he wanted to keep playing at Boston, even if he gets drafted, he could stay and play another season. He doesn't have to make the jump to the NHL if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, my thing is, and now I'm not a hockey player, especially of that caliber. I just don't see why wouldn't you want to? I mean, especially if he's projected to go first overall.
It's not about not wanting to. Sometimes it's about not being ready. I mean, on top of the skill of playing the game of hockey, there's the maturity involved in it as far as being a professional athlete. I mean, it's a huge sum of money to give to a 17 or 18-year-old kid. So mentally, he just may not be prepared for it. But I mean, I think he'll be playing anyways. But I heard that and thought it was funny. But yeah, there's certainly reasons why younger guys don't jump into the league right away. There are plenty of young players in this league between 20 and 24 who were highly touted prospects, but didn't break into the league till after 20. So, I mean, it happens.
It does. But back to Denver, I just want to say congratulations to Denver. Not who I wanted to win, but I'm happy for them nonetheless. A lot of good young talent and prospects on that team. So that's a good look for them moving forward.
It was their 10th national title.
I was just going to
it's got
say,
to be near the top of the college hockey rankings for all time.
I mean, that's impressive shit right there. So granted, I was rooting for BU, and then obviously it didn't work out. So then I was rooting for Boston College. And as I tend to see with every team I root for, if I'm rooting for a team, they ain't winning anything. So
yeah, I would have loved Minnesota to get a crack at the Frozen Four, to play it at home, essentially at home in their hometown, or home Twin Cities, if you want to call them that. But, 20 minutes from their home rink in an NHL size arena would have been pretty sick, but that's all right. Denver has a fantastic program. They really always have. So certainly not surprised to see that they won it.
Yeah, I got to say though, man, I was kind of surprised that Minnesota didn't make the Final Four. I thought, I don't know. You think Minnesota, man, I thought they would be a lock for sure.
You'd think so, but Boston, I mean, they have so many good players, and they just couldn't keep up. Celebrini was just too quick for them. They looked like they were a step behind, and Justin Close just wasn't able to lock it down as he usually does. So not that that's on him, but BU is just a really good team this year. So
yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we get to the meat and potatoes of this show too?
Let me take a guess.
Yeah. So we talked about the Coyotes last episode. It seemed pretty much all but certain that we're moving out of Arizona to Salt Lake City. Then some information came down the wire on Friday night that the GM had met with the players. They were up in Edmonton to inform them that the team is relocating. So still nothing official from the team or the league yet, but the word gets out pretty quickly with all the sources this league has. So we know now we're waiting the official announcement from the league. It's expected as early as Wednesday. But we will soon be officially looking at the Coyotes being on their way out of Arizona to Salt Lake City, Utah. Andrew, what are your thoughts now that we are like 99.999% convinced that this is happening?
I'm excited, man. I mean, excuse me. You guys have all heard me talk about it. I mean, I wanted this, and there's a lot of people that have wanted this. I know if you're a Coyotes fan, this isn't exactly what you want. Nobody wants to see their team get shipped out of town, but from the outside looking in, this is exciting. A city that can hold an NHL franchise, and it will thrive there. I promise you. The market is there. Speaking of that, before I lose it, I have a question for you regarding the team going to Salt Lake. So remind me when I'm done. We're
going to talk about Utah after we talk about Arizona specifically. So hold that for them, because we're going to do a whole segment on Utah, because there's a few things I found out that were pretty fascinating. So
all right, perfect. So I'm excited for this. There's a lot of moving parts to this. So one thing that we can't stress enough is that as quick as it is moving right now, or seems to be, this isn't an overnight process. Relocation is a pain in the ass for the league. So granted, they're talking about having them there for next season, which I think is great. Anything can happen. So don't be surprised if this doesn't go exactly the way they plan it. If something falls through, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place perfectly for this to be pulled off.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's pretty well done. I think they mostly need to put pen to paper, but one thing I do want to talk about is I saw online after it came down that the GM told the players they're getting ready to relocate. I saw there was a lot of conversation with people blaming the league for this, and I mean there was an equal amount of people blaming Coyotes ownership and everything like that. There was a lot of people blaming the league for this, and to them, I just want to say that this was Gary Bettman's baby for all these years. He wanted it to work in Arizona so bad. This team probably should have already been gone about 12 years ago. So the fact that they're even still there, you should be thanking the league for, because this team probably should have been gone for a long time. It's not even funny. I mean, how exhausting all this was, especially the last 3-4 seasons. We shouldn't even be here. This should have never even become a problem, because they should have just shipped the team out. But Gary gave them a ton of leash, and they took every inch of it until they finally got done. So for the people that are mad at the league, I don't know what to tell you. You're just 100% wrong here. Truthfully, there's no two ways about it. That it's been a train wreck from the beginning. The second that the league sold the Coyotes to new owners after they had to take ownership, I mean, they couldn't really find a good arena situation. They were at Gila River Arena for a long time, and that wasn't really working out. And then they went to Mullet, and it's just been a mess. They lost the Tempe vote. They're still waiting on this auction now. There's no guarantee Marijuela wins it. So I'm glad they pulled the roots up and just moved it out. And I know last episode we talked about the personal side of this, because the business side of this team, those employees will not relocate with the team. Only the hockey operations side will. So I know there are people that are going to lose jobs. I know the fans are crushed, but going forward, I want to talk about this from a hockey only perspective, because we know at this point that A, it's happening, and B, while there is people losing jobs on one side, there are tons of people gaining jobs on another side. So we could go back and forth with the emotional game all day about it, but ultimately this is a hockey show, and that's what I want to focus on. Is we're getting a team moving into a new city that has really high expectations as far as attendance goes. The new owners really want hockey bad. Utah can certainly support hockey, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But like I said, the Yotes had plenty of time to fix this, and they did it, and they didn't. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that I'll be the first person to criticize Gary Bettman any chance I get, as I think most hockey fans will. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, because, yeah, you could say he gave them too long, and this should have been done when they realized they had to go to the Mullet Arena. That's where I personally would have cut it and been
That
like,
would have
all
been
right.
my last straw. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other side, he wanted it to work. He gave them every opportunity, and he got burned on it. So I don't put the blame on the league entirely, maybe a small amount, but overall the team was run like pure garbage for the last 12 years. And it's not like these relocation rumors just came up recently. We've been hearing this for years with them. So
Yeah, it's
I
just it's
mean,
crazy how in 1 week it went from, look, they're building a new arena, to literally the next Sunday, and it's like, oh, they're leaving.
yeah. And
So
what I will say, what's exciting about this for me and probably a lot of other people, is that so now this team has moved into Salt Lake City. Now this also opens up an opportunity for two cities for expansion teams. And granted, there's a good chance that one of those will probably be in Arizona again, assuming they can win a land auction, getting a stadium built. I mean, there's, again, a lot of moving parts there that have to fall into place for it to work. But regardless, this still opens up a spot for two expansion teams now. So I think this is good, because you're essentially getting three new teams out of this in the future.
yeah, realistically, and you're getting 3 new teams with only having to add 2 more total to the league.
Correct.
So the Coyotes have a ton of draft capital as it sits right now. And we'll talk about this when we talk about them in the offseason too, because by the time we do that show in the offseason, we'll know a lot more about this. But just because of how many contracts they already have on the books, you got to imagine they have so many draft picks. They have over, I had the number and then I lost it, but they have tons of draft picks. We're talking double digits over the next, few years, where I think they're over like 10 picks per draft for the next few years. They have a ton of draft capital to use. They really had a okay start to this season. You got to wonder if they try and make a big splash with the relocation in the offseason.
I'm interested to see what they do. I know all we do on here is speculate, but I don't want to speculate too much on this, because, again, there's so much going on with this. I really only want to cover it as it happens.
That's fair. Yeah, with our luck, we would do this whole segment and then they won't move. But
Yeah.
it's in reality, it does seem like they will move. So we'll spend a lot more time with them this offseason, because this is just the beginning of this. It's just that we're getting so much information at once that we just kind of have to talk about it as we get it.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned, we'll talk about Utah and Salt Lake City now. You had a question for me. What were you going to ask?
So it's not a direct, I don't know how to word this. I'm just going to ask it. Okay. So the teams move into Utah. There's a very notable former NHLer that lives in the state of Utah, a former Stanley Cup champion goaltender by the name of Tim Thomas. He's essentially, since he's retired, has fallen off the grid, minus a few appearances here and there for
I say
pregame stuff for the Bruins.
he was at the Bruins not
Yeah,
too long ago.
he's done a few on ice appearances for the Bruins for like pregame ceremonies, but other than that, he's pretty much stayed clear of the National Hockey League or anything directly related to hockey. My question to you is, do you think this brings him back out into the limelight and he gets involved with this team?
Yeah, I don't really see it. He would barely come out of his shell for the team he won a Stanley Cup with. I gotta imagine he just stays holed up. He's he's kind of an odd dude, you know. I mean, he's
Yeah,
a hell of a goalie, but he's kind of an odd dude. So I don't know. I don't really see it. If he ever comes out of retirement, I gotta imagine it's for a role with the Bruins.
I would like to think that too. I was just curious because several months ago, probably back towards the beginning of the season, I was watching an episode of Spit and Chicklets where they interviewed Tuukka Rask on the show, and he was like, the guy's not living in a bunker or anything like that. He just wants his privacy, but he still loves the game. So I'm just curious. In my mind, it was just a thought I had. Could this be what brings him back into the limelight? But I 100% see your point, and I honestly hope that if he ever gets back into the game, it's for the Bruins organization.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think he will. I mean, it would be cool. I mean, he's really smart goalie, but yeah, I just don't see it. Now for Utah, we've learned a couple things. So, and we actually talked about this on the last show, talking about would you build them their own arena or renovate the one that the Jazz already play in. So I did not know this, and it was pretty under the radar. But the Smiths actually got a building permit back in January, so they are approved. They're going to spend, I forgot how much money, it's like $900 million, but they are actually going to build a new arena that's meant for hockey and basketball. So it looks like the Jazz are also going to get a new home out of this. There are questions of, are they going to use some of this money to renovate the current arena to make it ideal for both sports in the time being? But the ultimate end game for this is that they have the funds in place and the permits. They are going to build a new facility. So regardless of what they do with the current building, they are going to have a new one here moving forward. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I'm still a little torn. My personal opinion is keep the teams in separate. I got to stop hitting this damn mic, man. um, my personal opinion is keep the teams in separate arenas. That's just, I feel for the purpose of scheduling conflicts, it's easier to keep them in separate arenas. But I also see the point behind building a new arena for both of them.
It's so ineffective money wise. If especially since it's the same owner, it just does not make sense to have separate buildings.
Right. Well, and especially
that's the bottom line.
And the other thing is, if you're going to put the stadiums or the arenas right next to each other, okay, yeah, then just build a
Yeah,
new
no,
one. But if they were going to
they're
be on
gonna.
opposite sides of town or whatever, then I get it.
But yeah, it just financially makes so much more sense. I mean, you see it in some areas like the Twin Cities. You have the Wild play in downtown St. Paul. The Timberwolves play basketball in downtown Minneapolis. But those are two separate owners. At least I don't think Craig Leopold owns the Timberwolves. Oh, Alex Rodriguez and what's his name owned the Timberwolves. That's right. But again, that's a little different. But like scheduling, I don't think is a concern. This has been something teams have been doing for ages. Crypto.com Arena hosts the Lakers and Clippers for basketball and the LA Kings for hockey. The TD Garden hosts the Bruins and the Celtics. The Madison Square Garden hosts the Knicks and the Rangers. Sorry, I don't know how I couldn't think of the Rangers. Best team in the league right now. I say that wearing a Devils jersey. I might burst into flames here. That's another hockey team, Flames.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, scheduling conflicts, I don't think we'll have too much of an issue with that. These teams have been doing this for ages. So
Yeah.
I think one new building is the right way to go in this case.
That's a valid point. And when you pointed out Crypto Arena or whatever the hell it's called now, they were dealing with scheduling between 3 sports franchises in there and concerts and all kinds of other shit they did in there. They've made it work for how many years? So
yeah,
that's a valid point. I'll agree
which
with you on
with how much their taxes and stuff probably are in California, they got to have that building sold every night.
that. Dude, no kidding.
So now I want to talk about Utah because I don't know where this came from because there's no facts to back it up, but a lot of people were saying that, well, Utah's not a hockey market. Why would you put a team in Utah, even if they want one? I've heard it, let's put a team in Quebec City for the millionth time to the point where I'm sick of hearing it now. I hope it never happens. But I've heard, put one in Quebec City, put one in Hamilton, put one in Houston, put one insert location that person from that area likes. So I've heard all kinds of places. The bottom line is this: when the Winter Olympics were in Salt Lake City in 2002, it was the only time in Olympic history that every men's and women's ice hockey game was sold out. It's the only time it ever happened. Was Utah. So this city it's a growing part of the country. It's starting to become more dense in population. There's only the one pro sports team there, which is the basketball team, the Jazz. They're working at getting an MLB team. That the Smiths are trying to build a baseball stadium too, and so they're trying to bring in all these sports to this developing area and to an area that already loved hockey before it even had it. I don't think this will be an issue. So to the people that said this isn't a hockey market, it's just not true. People want hockey here. They want sports there in general, but they want hockey there. So the idea that they don't is dumb to me.
I want hockey there. I like I said, from the start, I've been an advocate for putting the team in Salt Lake City. I love the idea of it. And if you're a fan of somewhere else that doesn't have a team, get over it, man. Everybody wants a pro sports team wherever they're from. We've been bitching about not having a team in Milwaukee for how long?
I would say I live 25 minutes outside of downtown, or 30 minutes outside downtown Milwaukee. I would love for an NHL team to be here. The Fiserv Forum, where the Milwaukee Bucks plays, an excellent arena.
Absolutely. And they've shown it can hold a hockey rink. And
Yep.
they hosted that preseason game between the Minnesota Wild and the Blackhawks, and it was sold out.
Yep.
That tells you everything you need to know, right? There's absolutely a market for it.
I called to buy tickets for that game when they played it, and they said they had sold out all the tickets in the first 5 minutes that they were for sale.
I 100% believe that.
What's funny is the day before that game, somebody put some seats up on Ticketmaster. So me and my wife and a couple of our friends ended up going to it. It was really cool.
Well, the other thing too is, me living in Cleveland, I would love to see an NHL team come here. Now, granted, we have the Cleveland Monsters. They're the AHL team for the Blue Jackets. Oh. Okay. Speaking of which, they had almost 15,000 people at the game last night.
Yeah, I just saw that before we started.
It was fun. And but not to get off track, the Monsters are super popular here, and it's a minor league team. And when you go, Brian can attest to this because I've taken him to a couple games. It's like going to an NHL game when you're in that arena. So there's absolutely a market for here, but realistically, we're never going to see an NHL team here. Some cities just aren't meant to have it. And if you're a Quebec person, shut up. You're not getting a team. We're all tired of hearing about it. It's not happening. Listen, over it.
I get it. I get they have the arena, but there are other places that have the arenas too. Like I just mentioned, Milwaukee's got one, Cleveland's got one. Again, I don't think they'll stuff a third team inside Cleveland, but
no way.
Between the Cavaliers and the Monsters. But there are plenty of places that have an arena, and for some reason, Quebec City is somehow at the top of the list of places where people think there should be a team. I'm sorry, but Montreal is enough hockey for Quebec. It's the oldest franchise in the league. It's the most storied. I don't know if we really want another Canadian team. There are plenty of other cities that I think should have it before Quebec City. I think of like Regina, Saskatchewan. They're really passionate sports fans there. They love their Rough Rider football team.
Halifax,
Hamilton. Actually, apparently there's a building that's being built in Hamilton that's not for hockey, but it's getting ice plants. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's the worst lie ever. But there's plenty of facilities that can hold hockey and markets that'll probably never have it. I gotta imagine Quebec City's at the top of that list. I would think Milwaukee's another really good example. I think it would do well here, but it just is what it is. I think they want to get the biggest markets. They want Houston, they want Atlanta, they want Arizona. They're getting Salt Lake City now. I mean, these aren't small areas either. So I get the frustration of people that want a team in Quebec, but it just doesn't seem like it'll ever happen. As far as Utah playing in Utah, rather, I've heard rumblings of possible divisional realignment. Nothing at all even close to confirming anything like that, but just the possibility that they would keep the Pacific Division teams the same, except they would put Utah and Colorado in the Pacific, and they would switch them out and move Calgary and Edmonton to the Central. That would be a hell of a divisional realignment. I
Yeah,
mean,
it would.
you'd keep all the California teams in the Pacific. You keep Seattle and Vancouver in the Pacific because they're so close. But I think moving Colorado and Utah over, I think that would be really cool. That'd be a hell of a division to play in Vegas, Colorado, Vancouver. I mean, those are some really good teams right now. LA's good. That'd be a hell of a division. I think putting the Oilers in the Central is a terrifying premise if you're a fan of any of the other teams in the Central. Because that just doesn't sound like fun. It sounds horrible to have to play Connor McDavid 4 to 5 times a year, or 3 to 5 because the NHL scheduling is terrible. But having to play him more than you have to just doesn't sound great. But I actually would not be opposed to this divisional alignment. Geographically, it would make Utah and Colorado's travel a lot easier. In that same respect, it would make Edmonton's and Calgary's awful, but they're both kind of in no man's land anyways. They both have to travel so far to get to California, to Southern California and Arizona now. What's the difference?
Yeah, my take on this too, and I know a lot of things can be done with realignment as far as divisions go. But my thing is, now that you include the team relocating to Utah, they're not technically an expansion team, but I'm just going to say the last three newest teams to the league have been in the Western Conference. They've all been out west. So I figure, and again, this is just an opinion here, if you're going to put 2 expansion franchises in, try and find somewhere not necessarily out east, but closer to that side.
They're trying to Atlanta.
Well, Atlanta, yeah, and we all know how I feel about Atlanta. At the end of the day, I get it. I'm just not happy about it.
I would also not be surprised if Ohio could get another team, but I would think it would be Cincinnati before it's Cleveland.
I mean, I would have to agree for the simple fact. Now, Cincinnati does have the Cyclones, so of the ECHL. So you could argue. Now, I don't know how big that arena is. I've never seen it, never really looked into it. I know they're very popular in that area, so I know there's a market for it. I got to imagine it would never be Cleveland just because, first of all, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is extremely branded towards the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team, if you've seen the inside of it. Second of all, when it's not being used for that, they do some temporary rebranding for Monsters games. So there's just so much work that would have to go in there. I don't see how they could make it work with 3 different teams in that arena just because of how it's currently set up.
The Heritage Bank Center in Cincinnati, Ohio holds 17,556 people.
So it's doable.
It's not the most up-to-date barn, but with some renovations, yeah, it could very, very easily hold an NHL team.
You gotta imagine they're gonna bring an NHL team there. There's gonna be money that goes into that arena, no question.
Oh yeah, I mean
they're not gonna bring a new team in and say play in this filthy shithole. Not that arena is, but you get my point.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like I don't see why it couldn't work, but I certainly think there do need to be more teams in these. I don't think Quebec City is where they need to be, but yeah, I thought it was interesting. I'm like, I never even thought about divisional realignment. I mean, the Coyotes have played in the Central since Vegas joined the league. So, I mean, they've been in the Central for 7 years now.
Yeah. And I want to point out another thing too, as far as expansion teams to Canada goes. I don't know how other people feel about this, but I feel like 7 teams in Canada is enough teams in Canada right now. I understand how big the provinces are. Totally get that. But I think 7 is enough. Just my opinion.
Yeah. I think they should move the Calgary Flames back to Atlanta.
Stop relocating people.
Yeah. I just want to make Flames fans upset. They got to get that building replaced. I think there's a plan in place to replace the Saddle Dome finally, but Jesus Christ, is that barn tired?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I see so many Calgary fans say this is the best barn in the league, and I look at it and I'm like,
I don't know what Calgary fans you see. All of them I see say it's a shithole.
Oh, dude, I know so many of them. Well, not know them personally, but I've seen them everywhere. I was just like, dude, I've never been there, but just looking at it on TV, I'm like, oh, dude.
Brother, what is that, brother?
How you doing, brothers? I don't even know what the fuck that means.
All right, let's see. Let's pull up the standings here from the league because as of 2 nights ago, I believe we have our playoffs, our Western playoff teams all locked into playoff spots. The matchups aren't all determined yet. I think only one of them actually is right now, which is Winnipeg versus Colorado. So we're still waiting to see. But yeah, the 8 teams in the West that'll be in the playoffs: Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Vancouver, Edmonton, LA, Nashville, Vegas. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I'm just trying to see if there's any really tight races. There's a couple where there could still be some movement, but it looks like yeah, Dallas will probably walk away with the conference. And yeah, there's just a few. I mean, with 3 games left at most for some teams and 1 for others. I mean, it's easy to kind of see what these matchups are going to be, but nothing confirmed. But I don't know. What do you think? Dallas is looking really good now that they got Ottinger going. Winnipeg
Yeah.
just pounded the snot out of Colorado last night. That was 7-0.
I was surprised by that, honestly. I
I
mean,
didn't know Colorado hasn't beat them all season.
oh yeah, and I know how great Connor Hellebuck is. I don't want to discredit that,
But
but I will say I am extremely surprised with the Winnipeg Jets right now. It's just, I mean, a good goalie goes a long way, but everything's fallen into place for him right now. And to come out with a win like against Colorado like that last night is insanity, because you know how dangerous Colorado is, especially you being a Minnesota Wild fan.
yeah, here's the thing. Well, I know how dangerous both those teams are because the Wild didn't beat either of them the entire season. They were 0-12 against Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado combined. Here's the thing. Yeah, I know it wasn't great. So here's the thing. Winnipeg's really, really good. On paper, they are pretty closely matched to Colorado. I'd say Colorado's still a tier above them. And that's not to say that they can't beat Colorado, because they did all season. But we've talked about how the playoffs are different all the time. It is a different kind of game in the playoffs. I know Winnipeg won every matchup this season, but I'll say all of that to say that there is not a snowball's chance in hell that the Jets are beating Colorado in the playoffs. And you can hold me to it. You can at me if you want. I don't think the Jets stand a chance against the Avs in the playoffs. And they looks like they may even have home ice against them when this is all said and done, but I don't think they got a chance.
It's not going to matter. I'm not even going to dispute that, because like we all know playoff hockey is a completely different animal than regular season hockey, and Colorado is already terrifying during the regular season. And yes, I've said in the past, don't base it off regular season. Colorado's going to run right over them in the playoffs.
Well, unless Brendan Dillon goes out and cheap shots everybody, because that's all he does. But
yeah, no shit. But I can't talk because I'm a Bruins fan and don't want to mention any names, but we have players who've done that in the past. So
Marchand, I'll mention him.
Okay. But yeah, I agree with you. And now, real quick, do you think Hellebuck takes the Vezina this year, just since we're on Winnipeg?
Oh, by a mile, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
he was the most consistent. Not only was he the most consistent goalie in the league this year, I think he was just the best in general, anyways. Really had no extended periods where he was struggling. I mean, every team has its struggles throughout the year, but
right. It was never a goalie issue.
Yeah, no, especially after Demko got injured. I'm like, any consideration he had for the Vezina is right out the window. So
yeah. All right, cool. So we're on the same page with that. And I'm excited for him because he deserves it.
I can't wait for him to be Team USA's goalie. Then I can finally cheer for this motherfucker.
Dang, he MF'd him.
Yeah. Only for a couple weeks, though.
Yeah.
But right. Yeah.
I digress. Back to your point.
So then we look at some of the other possible matchups. So the Winnipeg, Colorado, that's the one we know is happening. In all likelihood, unless Vegas really turns up the heat here and LA loses its last 3 games. The other matchup we're probably going to get is Edmonton versus LA. That'll be the 3rd year in a row of this. Listen, if I'm a Kings fan, I'm really annoyed. How do you feel about their chances in a series against Edmonton?
If I'm a Kings fan, not good, and I would be pissed off too. You know, we've talked about it with Cam Talbot, his consistency. That's going to be a major factor in that series. And I mean, when it comes right down to it, regardless of anything that's happened that season, I don't want to play Connor McDavid in the playoffs, that especially in the first round. That's just it.
Nope.
So
look at the teams that have beaten the Oilers in the playoffs recently. The last 2 years, Vegas beats Edmonton in the second round last year, goes and wins the cup. Colorado beats them in the conference final the year before, goes and wins the cup. it's taking championship caliber teams to beat Edmonton, and it's anybody else is just fodder for them. I mean, last year they beat up on LA. The year before they beat up on the Flames like crazy. So it's hard for me to think LA really has a chance here, especially because they've kind of faltered a little as late. I mean, I want them to do well because there's a lot of good players on LA. I would really like to see Kopitar get another shot at the cup. He's starting to get, older now, but I can't imagine Cam Talbot being the guy that helps them get over the Oilers. So I don't, I'm with you in that. I don't really think that there's no chance, or I really think that there's no chance for LA in this series.
No, and like I said, you've got to be, if you're a Kings fan, you're irritated with this. Why do we have to keep playing them? Well, part of that is your team's fault. So, but then the other part of it, maybe not with this exact series, but it's part of the way the point system is run. And an example I can use for that kind of irritated me was Bruins fans. I've seen them mostly in private Bruins groups complaining that, oh, we're going to have to play Tampa in this round. This is BS. No, what's BS is the team is in first place over Florida because they've lost in overtime and still got points out of it.
Listen, between Gary's loser point for overtime losses in this dumb playoff format, instead of just doing 1 through 8 for each conference, I mean, realistically, yeah, the Bruins right now, even if honestly, even if the NHL did, even if they kept points and went to 1 through 8, the Bruins would actually still be looking at Tampa right now, anyways. But yeah, wins and losses wise, I mean, the Bruins should be one of the lower teams of these playoff teams. They have among the fewest wins. So it's kind of goofy, but it is what it is. In fact, if anything, they should be happy they're going to have home ice, because if it just went off wins and losses, they would, they might have home ice still. Yeah, they would have home ice. Toronto's got 1 fewer win, but again, it is what it is. Gary's not going to change his ways. I can't imagine a world where they go to 1 through 8 or get rid of this god awful point system.
Right.
Sticking with the West, though, it's looking like the wild card matchups, or for the wild card teams, Nashville is likely going to draw Vancouver and Vegas will draw Dallas. I'm going to start with Vancouver and Nashville because I think this is the closer series. I'm going to get your thoughts on a potential matchup there.
Vancouver and Nashville?
Yeah.
You're right.
You're wearing a Preds hat too. Yeah. Cover that up for this section.
Well, I think it's obvious who I would want to win that series. There's a lot of things that go into this, though. Gosh, man. I can see that series being an absolute. Are you wearing an Atlanta Falcons hat?
I am. A throwback one.
Okay.
I needed something neutral to go with my Devils jersey. I don't have any Devils hats because I'm not a Devils fan.
Fair enough. That could be a really good series that I think has the potential to go 7 games. I think Nashville surprised a lot of people this second half of the season, especially here towards the end. I still think Vancouver comes out on top, though. I just don't think Nashville has the consistency, and I think down the middle, Vancouver's the better team than Nashville.
That's fair. That's a fair. Now, granted, if you go top line for top line, I'm taking Nashville. I mean, I know Vancouver's really good, but there's something magical about Ryan O'Reilly with Forsberg, and Nyquist for some reason is really good this year. Which, God, I can't believe the Wild kept Marcus Johansson over Gus Nyquist.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that.
Yeah, so is everybody that cheers for the Wild. Well, everybody that has a brain other than Bill Guerin. I love a lot of the moves he's made, but that one just didn't make sense. Anyways, back to this matchup. I honestly think this one will surprise a lot of people if it ends up being what we get, and I'll dive further in once we know for sure it's happening. But I think Vancouver might get upset here, but I don't want to go too far on it because we may not get the matchup. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Vancouver beat anybody they play. They're just really, really well rounded, but ultimately it's going to depend on Demko's health.
Right,
that's what it's going to come down to. So, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see Nashville upset anybody just because of how well they've been playing.
And I hope to see it. I do love Nashville, so that's what I'm hoping for. But as you mentioned, there's goaltending on each side that's going to be a factor in this as well. So you see a lot of those big acrobatic saves from Saros, but we'll see.
The other potential matchup then, Vegas versus Dallas. Listen, Mark Stone's back, baby.
Yeah. Run the table.
Vegas in 4. No apologies. I hate Dallas. No,
Yeah.
realistically, this will be a great matchup. If Mark Stone is in fact healthy, ready to go for game 1, this will be one that it's too bad it's not a conference final matchup. That would be an incredible series. There are two really, really good teams. I know Vegas has kind of faltered as of late, except against, but yeah.
Well,
For those on audio and not watching on YouTube, I just nodded my head towards my Wild jersey because they beat the shit out of them the other night too.
yeah.
But yeah, no, these are two really, really good teams, and if they're both fully healthy, this will probably be the best matchup of the first round if we get it.
Well, that's one thing I want to question. Not that you have the answer to it, but is Mark Stone actually back at 100% right now, or is he doing what every other player in the history of hockey has done? And just because he was cleared to start practicing again doesn't mean he's completely ready. So I think if he's at 100%, forget it. It's goodbye, Dallas. But I still think there's room for upset here. But I am with you. I think Vegas is going to come in, lights out, on to the next round. No question.
We'll see. That'll be a tough one. I can't wait to see. I really hope that is a matchup because that'd be an incredible series. We're gonna have a really good first round, and I'm sure we'll foam at the mouth over it on our next show. But
Big time.
Yeah, out east though, it's kind of a mess, really. You look. Hang on, let me pull up the Eastern standings again. I should have just had these up on my computer. I'm looking at them on my phone instead. So looking out east, the teams that have clinched: Boston, Florida, Toronto, New York, Carolina, Tampa Bay. The Islanders have all but clinched too. They need one more point, realistically. If they get 2, they absolutely clinch. If they get 1, they're almost a guaranteed lock. They pretty much are already. So I'm going to throw them in with this group because I think they'll be in the playoffs. But that leaves Washington, Detroit, Philly, and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh goes out and loses last night to Boston. A lot needs to go their way for them to make the playoffs now. They are not in control of their own fate. So we'll see what happens. Philly, they only have 1 game left and they're tied with Washington in points. They need everybody else to lose, and Philly's last game is against Washington, so that's why I'm still giving them a fighting chance. If Washington falters their next game and then goes out and has a stinker against Philly could sneak in. In Washington, too, they have a game against the Bruins coming up, which is not an easy opponent at all, so there's a good chance they could lose, and they could lose to Philly. The reason why I don't think any of this matters is because Detroit's final 2 games are both against Montreal. And wow, are the Habs not great this year? Yeah. They've actually been playing okay lately, but with how desperate Detroit is right now, I gotta imagine Detroit is the team that comes out of this when the smoke clears, which surprises me because if you had asked me last Sunday, I would have said they're dead in the water. But between everything that happened this week with the standings just falling into their lap, where it's like, okay, we can kind of control this here, to the fact that now they have 2 games against Montreal to close the season. I don't see why they shouldn't be the team that comes out of this with a playoff spot.
I hope for the sake of Detroit fans that they're the team that comes out of it with the playoff spot. I mean, even me, I'm not a Red Wings fan by any stretch, but they should be. Realistically, this shouldn't even be a question. They should have had this locked down already. So, I don't know, man. I don't want to make any predictions because it's too close to call right now.
Yeah. So if we look at the standings in the East, really there's no guaranteed matchup right now, except I'm going to go out and say that the Bruins will probably win this division. So I'm going to say that probably we're going to get a Florida-Toronto first round. That's going to be nuts. Toronto's been playing really great lately. I know they had some defensive issues the last 2 games, including last night against Detroit. But these are 2 teams that are really kind of built for this in separate ways. Florida's stacked from top to bottom, but Toronto's just got such high skill on offense that if they can get hot, you really never know. So I would think Florida takes a series between the 2 of these teams, but I think most people pegged Tampa Bay to beat Toronto last year, and look how that turned out.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I mean, it was nice to see. Well, whenever Tampa loses, I'm happy. So, but I will say I got to use this slightly. I was happy for Toronto fans last year that they made it out of the first round.
I was just
Uh,
tired of seeing the first round memes. That's a part of the reason I hope one of these years they win the cup soon, just so I can
yeah.
stop seeing the same recycled, stupid fucking memes. They're just not even funny anymore.
Well, dude, not only that, Austin Matthews deserves a Stanley Cup. And I don't care if anybody else who's a fan of another team wants to argue with me on this. I don't care. The guy deserves a cup. He's just as good. I'd put him right up there with McDavid. McDavid's the best player of all time, but Austin Matthews is an incredible hockey player, and this season has all but cemented that.
Counterpoint to that, the only people that deserve the Stanley Cup are the people that win it. And I'll fight to listen. A lot of players are good, and like you look at like Jerome McGinley. Is it a shame he didn't win the cup? Absolutely. Did he deserve one? Not really. He didn't win one. Although in his case, you could say he did because they should have won Game 6, which won the cup in 04. So you could actually make the argument he did because they kind of got screwed out of theirs. But
deserve is the wrong word. What I meant to say was I want to see him win the cup. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. A lot of guys saying Joe Pavelski deserves one. I'm like, not if they don't win.
But it's like, again, with Matthews, when you go back and you look at guys like Jerome McGinley or even Joe Thornton, guys that you wanted to see their name on the cup, you don't want to see that happen ever. A
lot of really good players never ended up winning a Stanley Cup. It's really a shame, but
it is.
That's why it's important when we do Hall of Fame discussions. You don't exclusively look at that because, I mean, look at Jerome McGinley. He didn't win a Stanley Cup, but he's one of only like 20 players ever to score over 600 goals. So he must have done something right.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's just I wanted to just get your take on it. The East is still so undetermined. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's still so undetermined. It'd be hard to speculate on playoff matchups. With the West, it's a little easier because there's likely no change in those matchups based on how the standings sit with so few games left. Right. But with the East, it's just so up in the air. And the Toronto-Florida one's probably the only one that we are sure is going to happen. And it may now. We may get Boston-Toronto, which Boston in 4 if that happens. But Boston in 3. Yeah. Listen, everybody's got their boogie, man.
Look, man, I'm a huge Bruins fan. We've talked about multiple times on this show. I'm not jumping the gun on anything because anything can happen. And now that they made it out of the first round last year, I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, I don't
see who they play. Their first round opponent is either going to be Toronto or it's going to be whoever. It could end up being Tampa Bay. So we'll just have to see. But I was like, man, these races are really getting good. I mean, it literally looks like I thought we were going to get some leeway last week and some of these teams would lock it down, but it only happened in the West. So it looks like it's going to come down to these last few days to see who's in the playoffs.
Yep.
Which is good. You want that for the league. You want the last few days of the season to mean something. You don't want it where it's all locked in already. Like the Western Conference, other than the Wild's last game, I don't think I'm watching any Western Conference games this week because who cares? It's pretty much all locked in, and the East is where all the excitement's at right now as we close out the season.
Yeah, we'll keep a close eye on it. I mean, I'm going to be watching it like a hawk, so I'm looking forward to it, and I think we'll have a really good episode come Friday.
Yeah, and we'll get to the episode Friday because we are doing one on Friday this week instead of Wednesday. Before we do that, though, we do need to take a moment to mention our sponsors.
All right.
Well, I got mine ready too.
So do I, and I wore the shirt today for them. So I don't think I've done that yet. So I'm going to talk about our good friends over at Xenopucks. Xenopucks make a top tier. Probably gonna get yelled at if I keep calling them top tier, but dude, they're great. They make high quality.
What do you want to call them? Bottom tier? I don't know. They're pretty nice pucks.
Yeah, they're top tier off ice practice pucks. As you can see, they're not made of rubber, but they are the same size.
Made in the USA.
Hell yeah, America, baby. Oh God. They are the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck, and they have the same feel on your stick. So if you want to go practice your shot or your stick handling, but you can't get ice time, this is perfect because these work on almost any off-ice surface, whether it's, you want to go out in the driveway or your garage, or, teenagers, when your parents aren't home and you want to practice on mom's hardwood floors, these are perfect for that. So head over to xenopucks.com right now. Check them out. Check out their merch selection. As you can see, they have stuff. And Get yourself a puck. Check it out. Even if you're not a hockey player, just check them out.
All right. And if you're going to be buying a Xeno puck and you're practicing off ice, you should visit our friends at Hockey Wraparound. They have all kinds of things to help your hockey experience. They have equipment drying racks, they have tape for your stick. Their premium product, of course, is their hockey blade wraparound, which is going to protect your stick off the ice. So if you're practicing on concrete, asphalt, wherever you are, in the driveway, in the basement, on your mom's hardwood floor, who knows where you are, it's going to protect the blade of your stick. It's going to prevent the bottom of it from getting all chewed up and wearing the tape out and everything. So go to hockeywraparound.com/fresh ice and use the code fresh ice pod. That's going to get you 15% off your order. Again, a lovely pair made for off ice practicing. So thank you to both of them for sponsoring our show. I also want to mention, since my camera's off, we are having some technical difficulties. So we're just trying to get through the show right now. And really, it's been hellacious the last few minutes. So we're just trying to get through it. But if we're going to talk about sponsors, I also want to take a chance to do our tough look of the week, which is presented to us by Lighting's Property Management. For all your landscaping, lawn care, and snow removal needs, give Lightings a call. They do it all. Our tough look of the week this week is the Philadelphia Flyers, who, like I said before, they have a way they can get back into this and somehow sneak into a playoff spot. But the fact that we're having this conversation after they've been in a playoff spot the first 70 plus games of the season, it's pretty sad. And I know they've had issues in that and everything like that. It hasn't been perfect for them, and it's impressive that they even were in a playoff spot. But wow, losing 9-3 to the Habs is really not a good look.
That is the toughest look, because Montreal sucks. So this is not how I thought Philly's season was going to end, man. I thought for sure, especially with Torts behind the bench, I thought they were a shoe-in.
Yeah.
God, I don't even know what to say. I mean, and I don't like Philly at all, but I mean, just as a general hockey fan, this has been disappointing to watch.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you on that. It just is. It's a little shocking, but again, it's not the most talented roster, and I think that's just starting to catch up with them. You can be an excellent coach, but ultimately you have to still ice the players you have, and that's kind of where they're at right now. Is they're on the outside looking in, and first of all, if they do not win their last game, there's a 0% chance they make the playoffs.
Correct.
But they also need to beat Washington in regulation, and Washington needs to lose in regulation to the Bruins. Plus, they're also counting on Pittsburgh and the Red Wings to not win any more games. So it's a far cry for them, and that has earned them the tough look of the week.
Yes, it has. But I want to point out it's still not an impossibility. That's for sure.
You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Not a good one, but
yeah, not a good one. So a couple of things before we go. We are not going to do a show on Wednesday this week. We are going to, especially because this playoff race is so damn tight, we are going to do a show on Friday night. It'll allow us to have a complete day of emptiness because the last games of the season are Thursday night. We'll know all the playoff stuff by Friday, so it'll allow us to do a show completely separate of any games that are going on, and it'll set us up because Saturday night's the first night of playoffs.
Yes.
We are going to be having Ben Polacco join us on the show on Friday night. Yes, I know. We need somebody with talent on here, so it's good that he's gonna. Yeah, I was gonna say it's not us, so we're gonna be very happy to have Ben Polacco back on the show, and can't wait to set up the playoffs with him.
That'll be good because people have been asking for him. Like, legitimately, people have messaged me saying, you guys should get him back on the show. And I was like, trust me, we want him back. It's going to happen.
Yep. So it's I'm really excited to have him. And it stinks we aren't doing a show until the end of the week, but it'll just be ideal for what we need to do. So make sure you get those questions into contact at freshicehockeypodcast.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're liking and subscribing. I am now on Twitter. I finally decided to not be a boomer. I am on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter, or X as it's called now, at Brian Fresh Ice. And I'm already on Instagram at Brian Fresh Ice. Andrew, what are you thinking before we go, buddy?
Well, first of all, I want to say if you are going to follow on Twitter, the show's on Twitter too, at Fresh Ice Hockey. I'm not gonna lie, that our show's Twitter page is mainly used just to keep up with stuff. We don't really post on there too much. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow Brian's Twitter.
Yeah. I'm
Before we
mostly
go,
following just to stay up to date on things, but I'm like, you know what? I'm on there.
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we don't post if you're trying to keep up with the show, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. That's where
100%.
everything gets posted. So I do want to say, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you remember to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And, you know, if you're listening on one of the streaming platforms, be sure to give us a rating or leave us a review. And like Brian said, make sure you get those questions in. Like I said, that's what we're here for. We love answering the questions. It's fun for us. So make sure you get those in.
Yes, definitely. And especially since we're going to have a guest on Friday with how well versed in hockey that Ben Polacco is, it would be really nice to get some of his answers to these questions. So this is a good week to get your questions in. Again, don't forget to follow us on social media. Don't forget to check out our sponsors. Next time we talk to you, the regular season will be over and we'll be setting up for playoffs. I can't fucking wait.
Yeah, man, I'm ready to run through a wall. Real quick, one more time before we go. Since we were speaking about having a guest on Friday, we do have 2 additional guests coming up in future episodes. So make sure you are following on social media to stay up on that, because that's where the official announcements will be made for that.
All righty, guys. We'll see you on Friday. Take care and comb your hair. All right. We'll see you guys in a couple days.
All right, guys.